So today on Hoarders, we attempt to persuade a young Mios that he really should just leave his grandfather's urn at home. It's not going to be necessary on his next adventure. Let's talk about the Thaumaturge class from the Dark Archive Playtest on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I'm the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I'm a storyteller who's having trouble deciding if it would be funnier to use the name Winchester for my next gunslinger or my next thaumaturge. Who am I kidding? This is why multi-class archetypes exist. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today we're looking at one of the new Dark Archive Playtest Classes for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We're going to be talking about the Thaumaturge class. Now, Paizo has said that the Thaumaturge is sort of an updated look at the Occultist class from Pathfinder 1st Edition. The Occultist class was very popular in 1E, and there have certainly been a lot of people clamoring for the class to make a return in 2nd Edition. So now we finally get a chance to take a look at what Paizo is presenting for the Thaumaturge class. I'll say this up front, you can definitely see where Paizo has drawn a lot of inspiration from the 1st Edition class, but you can also see where Paizo is taking the class in a new direction. In fact, teaser for the remainder of the video, the Occultist class is no longer a caster class, it's a martial class with some magical flavor to back it up. Now, some quick notes about this video. Number one, the playtest was dropped on Monday, and I am recording this video and the psychic video on Tuesday. So my reactions to these classes, these are my initial reactions. These are my gut check reactions, if you will. I have not had a chance to playtest either of these classes, and I have not seen these classes in action. So anything I say in this video, please take it with a grain of salt, because if I'm being honest, after I've had a chance to do some of the playtesting, my opinions may change. They may even change radically. I will say this though, my wife is extremely excited about both of these classes. On the previous playtest, she thought it was interesting, but on this playtest, she actually wants to roll up both classes for our home game. So there is a ton of excitement around both of the Dark Archive classes. So if nothing else, Paizo, I can definitely give you this compliment. My wife is excited about the material you are bringing to the table. Now, this class is going to be for the Thaumaturge, and I'm recording a video on the Psychic separately. I'm going to put a poll up on my YouTube page to see which class you all are more interested in, and I'll try to edit that video and get it out first. So we won't be talking about the Psychic in great detail here, but if you are interested in the Psychic video, there should be another video either out or coming that you can watch on that class. The final thing I feel like I should note for this video is these are playtest classes. Paizo takes the playtest very seriously. They want you as a player to roll up these characters, use them in your games, try them at your tables, and give them real gameplay reports about how these classes feel and how these classes function. I love the playtest system that Paizo uses, and so I just want to strongly encourage you, if you can be a part of this playtest, definitely do so. Maybe drop these classes into your game, maybe do a one-shot with your group using these two classes, and even if you can't play these classes, it's still worthwhile to go ahead and read these classes and at least let Paizo know how it feels on first glance, if you will. Every data point that we give Paizo on these two classes ultimately shapes the future of this game. Paizo respects their customer base enough to listen to what we have to say, so let's take advantage of that and help shape these classes into the best possible version that they can be. So, let's get started. Okay, so what is the Thaumaturge class? Well, if I were to give a simple summary of what I think the Thaumaturge feels like to me, it kind of feels like Sam and Dean from the show Supernatural. You are a scholar about mysteries and weird things, and you go around collecting different items that you can use to battle against supernatural foes. And that battle against supernatural foes, as soon as I read it, I'm like, this feels like an episode of Supernatural. This feels like the character you would play if you were in Sam and Dean's universe. Functionally, the Thaumaturge class is an updated version of the Occultist class from Pathfinder 1st Edition, but one of the major changes that they've made is that they've moved the Occultist from having a strong spellcasting focus to having a strong martial focus in 2nd Edition. The Thaumaturge has the potential to use some magic, but it is not nearly as significant as it would have been in the 1st Edition version of the class. So if you're coming from Pathfinder 1e, just be aware of that up front, that they have pushed this class in a more martial direction. The class still focuses on using implements and having unique powers associated with strange and magical items that your character possesses. And any thaumaturgist worth his salt, which he probably is carrying, is going to have a ludicrous collection of esoteric items that they can use to battle against supernatural foes. The implements side of the class is still present, though they are taking it in a little bit of a different direction in this edition of the game. For me personally, when I look at the mechanical side of the Thaumaturge in the playtest, I feel like it lands about halfway between the Ranger and the Investigator. And for fans of the channel who know that I'm not the biggest fan of the Investigator, let me just go ahead and put your hearts at ease. The Thaumaturge actually feels like what I would want the Investigator to be. I swear I'm not trolling people. I swear. It's just this class is completely replacing the Investigator for me. There's no reason I play an Investigator now. You begin the game with a good selection of weapons and armor, and you eventually get master proficiency with your weapons and armor, which, by the way, is basically on par with what the Ranger gets. You begin trained in the Arcana, Religion, Nature, and Occult skill, and while you get the standard progression of class feats, ancestry feats, skill feats, those sort of things, the class does give you 2 bonus skill bumps during your progression, which can only be applied to Arcana, Nature, Occult, or Religion. And the class really focuses in on empowering the Recall Knowledge action. So that mix of Ranger weapon proficiencies with a diverse skill selection really built around the Recall Knowledge action is the reason that I say that this class kind of sits in between the Ranger and the Investigator for me. At level 1, you're going to get 2 special actions that you can perform: Find Flaws and Esoteric Antithesis. Find Flaws is an action that is basically a more powerful version of Recall Knowledge. Its primary function is to allow you to identify enemy weaknesses easier and possibly even gain some bonus information about your enemy when you make Recall Knowledge checks against them. After you use Find Flaws, you can then use the Esoteric Antithesis action. Now, it is important to note, if you critically fail your Recall Knowledge check for Find Flaws, you cannot use Esoteric Antithesis, but as long as you roll a failure or better on Find Flaws, you are allowed to use Esoteric Antithesis, where you basically target a creature, and even if they're not weak to anything, you give them a weakness, and that weakness is labeled you. That's their ability. They point at someone and they say, "You are weak to anything I'm about to do to you." This ability is a little crazy, but I love it. An example that they use is of a thaumaturgist that is fighting a tyrant, and so he uses Esoteric Antithesis to present a chain that had been broken off of a slave, and that spiritual symbolism of a broken chain inflicts a weakened condition on the tyrant that the thaumaturge is facing. As you can tell, this is intended to be very flavorful, very flexible, and, in my opinion, really cool. This is a creative gamer's playground, and I can see Find Flaws and Esoteric Antithesis leading to some really fun role-playing moments for the Thaumaturge class. Now, as with most classes that Paizo puts out for 2e, there are a couple of key terms that they give us for the Thaumaturge class, and those key terms are Esoterica and temporary items. And basically, from what I can tell, these terms both exist as a way of saying, listen, this stuff is important to you, but nobody's going to buy it. Sorry if I laugh too much in this video, but there's a lot of fun, flavorful stuff here, and I am truly getting a kick out of what Paizo has presented. So, Esoterica are those spiritually symbolic or somehow magically aligned items that your character collects that they use with various class abilities. I imagine if there's a thaumaturge at the table, there's going to be lots of moments where an item is going to be mentioned or used during the story, and even though the item loses its power or doesn't seem to have any remaining power, I can definitely see thaumaturges going, ooh, that seems cool, that seems significant, that seems like it might have some symbolic potency. I'm going to take that and I'm going to add it to my bag of nifty tricks. Esoterica are just the items that your thaumaturge uses to power their various class abilities. The other key term that you'll find is temporary items, which are, well, exactly what the name says, items that are temporary. Much like the infused items that an alchemist makes, the thaumaturgist has the ability to craft items that have some sort of temporary bonus or effect, but that power is not going to remain forever. And the game goes out of its way to note that when your thaumaturge creates these items, that they are clearly not up to the same level of craftsmanship as a normal item, so nobody's going to buy them. Basically, as a thaumaturge, you have a lot of stuff, you have a lot of toys, but they're your toys, nobody else is going to benefit from them. But I think that's a good segue to the most important conversation for the thaumaturge, the most important toys you have at your disposal, your implements. So the main toys that you get as a thaumaturge are going to be known as implements. And implements were a class option for the 1E occultist, but the thaumaturge implements are going to function a little bit differently from what you may have seen before. In the 1E version, implements were associated with specific magical schools. That's not the case here. Now, each implement comes with a particular theme that unlocks unique abilities and powers. At the start of the game, you will bond with one particular implement and gain an initiate power for that implement. For example, if you took the wand implement, you would gain the fling magic action that you could only use while wielding that implement. Every implement has an initiate, adept, and paragon power, and as you progress through the class, you will unlock 3 different implements of your choice, and you'll get to choose which implements you want to gain adept or possibly even paragon powers for. Now the playtest focuses on 5 implements: the amulet, chalice, lantern, wand, and weapon. Paizo has already said the final version of this class will have 9 implements available, so there are 4 more implements that are going to be released with the full version of this class. Paizo has not told us what those are, but that is definitely some fun stuff to speculate on, so it's time to segue to YouTube commentary. Good job, Mark. Leave your thoughts in the comments below about what implements you think Paizo might add to the final version of this class. And along with those comments, also feel free to leave your thoughts about the playtest version of the class, this video, and how you think the Thaumaturge is going to fit into Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And while you're at it, do all of the other YouTube stuff as well. Like the video and share it if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel to be part of these conversations. And if you're interested in my free Discord or my Patreon, you can find the links to those in the video description. But silly YouTube stuff out of the way, let's go back to talking about implements. As I've said, there are 5 implements, and each implement is going to have an initiate, adept, and paragon power. However, the core of each implement is a particular theme. And to avoid making this video way too long, we're going to focus mostly on what the themes for these 5 implements are. The first implement is the amulet, which is focused on defensive powers. It gives you a powerful defensive reaction that you can use to protect yourself, and eventually you might even be able to protect your allies as well. And while some people are trying to claim that the Thaumaturge is going to replace the champion as the best tank in the game, I don't go that far, but I do think if you're looking for a solid tanking option, the Amulet Thaumaturge is a choice worth considering. The next implement is the Chalice, which is themed around healing. It allows you to give temporary HP to your allies if they take a drink from your chalice, or they can even drain the chalice for more powerful healing effects. The Lantern is themed around revelation and truth. It obviously provides an area of light that you can use to see around you, but that light also reveals truth about your enemies and can help reveal things like haunts that you might encounter. The Wand is the implement for the Thaumaturge that is obsessed with magic and wants to unlock magical secrets. The base version of this allows them to use their wand to generate a cantrip-like attack spell that can launch energy damage at a foe. And then the weapon implement is for the Thaumaturge who is most focused on bringing the fight to their enemies, and in addition to all of its supernatural effects, can be used to hurt things. So those are the 5 implements that are in the playtest, and your character will start with one of those implements, and you'll get to unlock 2 more implements during the course of play. So as you progress through the game, your Thaumaturge is going to have a unique set of actions, reactions, and potentially magical abilities that they can bring to bear when they are fighting supernatural foes. Now, there are a plethora of options for the Thaumaturge, especially when it comes to class feats, and given the fact that I haven't done any playtesting yet, I don't want to dive too deep into those at the moment, but I do want to point out that there is a theme among a lot of Thaumaturge class feats that a lot of those feats have the uncommon trait. In the Psychic video, we talk about how the Psychic class is considered to be an uncommon class. The uncommon trait means that there are often narrative restrictions that might say this option is unavailable without Game Master permission. And they actually slap the word uncommon across the Psychic to say this entire class choice is something that has a little bit of narrative restriction to it, so talk to your storyteller first. The Thaumaturge doesn't have the uncommon trait, but many of its class feats do, representing the fact that while your Thaumaturge may have a particular skill set, there are often going to be certain narrative elements that you might need to achieve or unlock in order to access certain class feats, and you may want to talk to your storyteller about the particular elements you're interested in if you want to take class feats that have that trait. Examples of this include the Pact feats and the Ritualist feats. One of the Pact feats is called the Pact of the Final Breath, where you have made a deal with a psychopomp that allows you to live longer and possibly even get hit points back when you go unconscious, but you also have an obligation to care for any dead bodies that you might find during your adventure. The obvious storytelling element there being that you need to find a psychopomp and make that deal with them in order to unlock that particular Pact class feat. So be aware that when you are looking at Thaumaturgist options, while the class itself and many of the options are freely available, there's going to be certain options inside of the class that are going to come with restrictions, and you should definitely talk to your storyteller before just assuming you can run with those things. So that was a brief overview of the Thaumaturge class. What are my initial reactions to the class? What do I like and what concerns do I have? Well, on the positive side, if you haven't been able to tell from my constant giddy laughter, the flavor of this class is pure win. The various class abilities, the various feats, all of the different elements that they have used to bring the flavor of the Thaumaturge into reality is just amazing. I love the flavor of this class, and I can definitely see a creative storyteller and a creative player having a field day with the different narrative options that this brings to the table. However, that does kind of lead into the first concern I have with the class, and that is that the class feels like one of those that is going to reward heavy roleplay over someone who might be a casual or new role player. Creative players, creative storytellers, people who are really willing to dig in and have some fun with the implements and esoterica of this class, they can probably do some incredible things with this class in play. But I could see a newer player or a casual player just not getting the same mileage. And if your storyteller isn't as comfortable with improvisation, again, I feel like you could end up in a situation where this class is not playing as strong as it could. In some ways, I feel like the Thaumaturge is a more advanced class than any class that was in the Advanced Player's Guide because of the level of creativity that it both expects and rewards. The other concern I have about this class is a mechanical concern, and this is one where, again, let me say, no playtest data to back up this statement. This is just initial reactions. I'm concerned about the mechanical impact of this class due to its action economy. This class has the ability to point at an enemy and go, you are weak to anything I'm going to do. Flavor-wise, I love it. But it's kind of like the bonus damage that you get from the Ranger Hunt Prey ability. Rangers spend an action, point at someone, and that person is getting ready to feel the hurt. Meanwhile, the Thaumaturge points at a person, makes a recall knowledge check, and then, as long as they don't critically fail, which, granted, shouldn't be that often, as long as they don't critically fail, then they can spend a second action to point at the person and gain some really impressive damage. Rangers gain bonus damage for one action with no skill check required. The Thaumaturge gains bonus damage for 2 actions, and that bonus damage doesn't happen if a skill check goes awry. I worry about this. Additionally, even though the Thaumaturge is a martial class, its starting saving throw proficiencies are caster saving throw proficiencies, where it's only an expert in will saves. So this is a martial class where I wonder if it has the punch that it's going to need. In the Gunslinger playtest, there was a lot of pushback that the Gunslinger wasn't as effective as it should be because of the action economy of the class, and I wonder if the same thing might be happening here. Now, Esoteric Antithesis is powerful. It looks good. In fact, when I first read it, it almost looked too good. So, with the balance of action economy versus the bonus that you get, maybe, just maybe, it's going to work out well. But I've got to admit, it is a concern that I have for the class. But let me end on a positive note and talk about something that Paizo is doing here that I think there's a lot of room for in the game at large. A common class with uncommon options. We've seen things like uncommon archetype options or uncommon spells, but to the extent of my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've seen uncommon class feats. You have the Thaumaturge, which is readily available to every game, and yet at the same time, certain aspects of the class are reserved for certain narrative moments, certain storytelling beats. I think that makes for interesting play space, and that is something I would love to see not just for the Thaumaturge, but honestly, for every class inside the game. I think Paizo has hit on a goldmine here. But at the end of the day, let me just troll the Investigators fans one last time and say the Thaumaturge is a class I think I'm really going to enjoy. In fact, this is what I wish the Investigator class had been from the very beginning. It feels like such a better fit to a fantasy-style game, and I can see a lot of mileage coming from this particular class. But let me turn the conversation over to you. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts about the Thaumaturge are. Let me know what implements you think they might add to the final version of the class. And for the Investigator fans, I love you. Let me know in the comments why I'm still wrong about the Investigator. Oh, and don't forget to go to Paizo's website after you've playtested the class and answer their survey so that they can get your feedback. Do all the YouTube stuff, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, check out my Discord and my Patreon, but most importantly, be part of the conversation. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day.